I'd like to call the meeting to order. So I'd like to start by recognizing that we are, as always, working, playing, and living on the unceded territories of the Sauk. We have an amendment to the agenda with item 9.1. 2023-2024 Operations Parks Capital Projects Report, staff report. So I'd like to move that the agenda for March 27th, 2023, regular meeting of council be adopted as amended. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to adoption of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Meadows. Any comments on the? Lovely. Thank you, staff. Great job. Voting on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And we have a delegation. Item 5.1 of the building bylaw. Mr. Haldane. And I can't. Okay, there we go. Can't see the screen.
Herb Haldane, 3118C Otter Point Road. I'm here on behalf of what we call the Sauk Development Association. And what it is, there's a bunch of builders and stuff in Sauk here that between myself and Randy Clarkson's office at West Coast Design, try to come up with some sort of understanding of directions we're going and how we can maybe come to some agreements or some changes and maybe even be included in some of the processes, which hasn't really been the case through the COVID years and up to now. And we'd like to get on board with more consultation and the process if that's possible. I came forward on this because of the, I gave you guys in your thing that was recommendation back in 2020 that the committee of the whole receive a report on proposed building bylaw number 780. And then it talks about a council of action report done in 2018, which was the previous council, and they sent it on to you guys after the election. And it talked here about land use was established to mandate providing recommendations to council initiatives that focus on improving to building permits, development and land use applications, updating existing applications and policies, and ensuring district policies align with provincial standards. And I can tell you that the building department here is trying, and I talk to the building inspectors on a regular basis, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't align with the provincial standards, which was a requirement. And why it wasn't done during the COVID years, that would be probably because there wasn't any input from the construction community and the builders and so on. So things got missed. It talks in here about suites. In Sauk, we probably have, if I was just to guess, 150 duplexes with suites in them, yet they're illegal. They're acting, fire protection is expected, addresses should be put on these units. And it's the province is saying that they've already asked us to do this in 2019. We haven't done that yet. So if you want to bring all the stuff up to standard, that should be one of the big changes made. 60-40% split with suites. So what they're saying, the province is saying now is there's no more 60-40 split. The main part of the house used to have to be 60 and the suite could be a maximum of 40% of the size of the house. They're saying that doesn't exist anymore. But in our bylaw, we're not allowed to do anything more than a 60-40 split. You've got suites that are allowed in townhouses. That doesn't belong. That's not in our bylaw, and it's never been put into our bylaw. You also have firewalls for suites that in our bylaw was changed in 2022, a 1 hour firewall. There isn't a single 1 hour firewall in a suite in a provincial standard, but yet we push it to 1 hour, which requires you to do a lot more work than a 45-minute, which is the requirement under the provincial stuff. So I think if we're going to do any changes to building permits and things like that to try and speed them up, we need to come into terms with what's expected, what you want the builders to do, and then what the province and match up with the provincial rules, because that hasn't been happening. And I know there's a few other things coming forward, some bylaw changes and things like that, even some on the agenda tonight. And I think they require a lot more input from the building community, the development community, real estate community, and so on, because there's a whole bunch of rules that we're expected to follow that don't always make sense, and they cause the big delays that you guys get to hear about. And they also, it's the fairness component. I look through the Local Government Act and things like that and find out that some of the rules that we have in place here don't align even with that. So it makes me wonder whether all of it's vetted through the lawyers or whether some of it just gets pushed through and it gets overlooked, and probably not by anybody's fault. But I think some of this stuff, we need to go back to the table and start looking at it. Because I can tell you, I can find mistake after mistake on all this stuff. So I just thought I'd come forward tonight, bringing some more stuff here, and I'll try and come over and come forward, especially on behalf of the Builders Association, for more and more of this stuff as it comes forward.
Well, I'd like a special thanks because I'm sure you kept it under time and I forgot to put a timer on.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
That's why I was talking so fast.
Oh, it isn't.
Yeah.
Someone else did it for me. Thank you.
Anyhow, thank you very much.
Actually, before you go,
Yeah.
I guess it's a delegation. We're not really looking for questions, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Having said that, I do have a question for staff on this. I believe that we do have an engagement process coming up specifically with regards to the DPAs. Has this been put out to the public? It certainly came up in council.
So based on the motion from the last council meeting, there'll be a report coming forward again to council on, I believe it's April the 11th, just discussing further the process for continuing the review of the official community plan, which as previously discussed, was to include a local and regional engagement opportunity with builders and developers.
And this will be specifically to address issues with the DPAs. So we are trying to make sure there's, so keep an eye out because there'll be more to come on that. And I would also be curious to a staff response on coming into alignment with the provincial regulations in terms of the building bylaws. And if there is a requirement, how soon do we have to meet it? And how are we doing?
So in terms of changes at the provincial level, there's the opportunity to further expand the housing opportunities within each municipality as each municipality sees appropriate. So in terms of alignment, there's nothing that is not allowing us to continue proceeding as is. It's just saying, should you wish to go a step further, you can, and is the expectation of this staff that we will explore this further following adoption of the official community plan. The zoning bylaw will be reviewed, and at that time, that's when we would look at the possibility of expanding the opportunity for suites to be included in other uses beyond just the single family dwelling. As it stands right now, if we were to just do a blanket review and accept suites to be in townhouses and duplexes, there are unintended consequences such as sufficient parking and other requirements that need to be considered. So we want to have that comprehensive review as part of that zoning bylaw to ensure that if we are to allow for more dwelling units, that things such as parking are also sufficient on those sites. Otherwise, we get into instances where we know those needs for parking will just have to be accommodated elsewhere, which is ultimately on the road. And if the road does not have capacity for it, we end up in situations like we have throughout the community where there's very minimal access width to get through those neighborhoods. So we have to take a full comprehensive look at that, and that will be what the zoning bylaw review will accomplish.
Okay, so I'm going to try and sum that up and you can confirm. Some of this is waiting for the OCP, so we do a full comprehensive review of the zoning of those regulations.
Correct.
Some of this is opportunities that the province has allowed in terms of expanding what was previously not allowed, but we're not required to actually go with that, though we may well do so in the future with that comprehensive review.
Correct.
Okay. Further questions?
No, just more of a comment, and thank you for the delegation tonight for coming forward, because I think there's an appetite around the council table that I've been hearing now for all of us to get on the same page with the development community, with our staff, and with council, and ultimately the members of the public, to start streamlining our processes and reviewing, because none of us want to be hearing all of these delays that are going on and on and on. But I think it's got to be that spearheaded approach. And I was happy at our meeting, our committee of the whole meeting, where we agreed to have members of the building community come forward and start giving us input to where we can be better as a team. And I think we really need to adopt that. Staff, the community, and council together be aligned in the alignment. So I'm looking forward to some good movement there.
Absolutely. Any further comments? Council Bateman?
Well, yes, given this opportunity, unlike the earlier delegations this year, just to point out and get confirmation that our 2020 building bylaw is based on the Municipal Insurance Association of BC's model building bylaw, which I believe was recommended for use by the Land Use and Development Committee of 2018 was, I think, Mr. Holiday, and you were on that with Mr. Clarkson and some others. And what my takeaway here, to follow up on what our deputy mayor said, is that once the OCP and the zoning bylaws dealt with, we will look at a review of the building bylaw that might incorporate May 1st. There's a new series of recommendations coming forward from the province.
Thank you.
There was a quick question.
Oh, quick question.
To confirm that.
Yeah. So once the official community plan has been adopted, staff's intent is to review the zoning bylaw, and through any potential zoning bylaw changes, we'll also make sure that any other standalone policies and as well the building bylaw are also in alignment with the OCP and the zoning bylaw.
I'd like to follow up by just thanking Mr. Haldane again. I think your comments are generally extremely pertinent and well thought through. You actually provided some materials ahead of time, and all of that is much appreciated, along with being a spokesperson for the community. So thanks. Councilor Beddoes?
Everybody else had a go, so
Well,
if you don't, through the chair, this is to staff. We've already established we're gonna get the OCP passed, then we can get into the zoning bylaws. When it comes to zoning bylaw change, is there a plan at that time to consult with the builders again as we change those? Or is there a mechanism in place that we could do that?
The full scale work plan for that project has yet to be determined, but at this stage, it's always staff's intent that we would do a full engagement with the community, and specifically, we would want to have that input from the building and development community as well on that project.
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. And I believe that many of the proposals from the province that could be adopted actually tend towards allowing more creativity and allowing more housing to be available. I think that's certainly something that we might find out more about next week at the Housing Summit. So we'll see how that goes too. So stay tuned. Okay, so moving on. Report from the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Schaefer.
And your worship, I don't have anything to report. We did have a meeting, which I thought was pretty productive and forward-thinking meeting with Mr. Haldane last week about some of these issues. So Matthew Paulo and I did meet with him, and it was I thought a good, as I say, forward-thinking meeting. Other than that, though, I don't really have much to report other than to say thanks for entrusting your community with me for a second time. And at the end of the week, after I'm done, I wish you all the best, and hope that you're aware of how good your staff is and what a good council you have an opportunity to be over the next 4 years. So thank you for that.
And I don't think I'm alone in thanking you for your work, your patience, and your good humor in this somewhat difficult time. And your very thick skin. Okay, at this point, we're moving on to item number 7, which is the public question and comment period. This is the opportunity for the public to speak up on any item in the agenda, I believe. Is that correct? With 2 minutes on the clock. And please provide your name and local government of choice and preference. Yes, please do.
Thank you, your worship, members of council. My name is Jim Hartshorn. I live at 2789 Guyton Way. And I'm speaking on item 10.1. And your administrator just said goodbye, and I was just introduced to him today for the first time. So I'm speaking on the amendments to the subdivision bylaw. And 2 things. I'd asked for a meeting with your CAO, and he accommodated that, plus your other senior staff. So I really appreciated the meeting we had today. And I'm speaking on something that is really dear to me. I've been involved with local government for 52 years, doing tremendous amount of development across the province. And when I see amendments to subdivision bylaws, I get interested in zoning bylaws and OCPs. Those are the three things that make a community work. And I must tell you, I was pleased with your staff's response to me today when I talked about what input have you got from the developers or the builders, the people who actually spend the money in your community. And the understanding was that it would be going forward and be dealt with in the summer. I didn't realize until I got to my office today that it actually is on the agenda tonight. So I'm going to ask at the end of this, I have an ask, and it's going to be that you table this so that you don't have to rescind it in the future after you have input. I think the staff are anxious from what they said to me today and what I heard from your council tonight to have input from the development industry, the people who actually spend the money to develop your community. And I think a change to the subdivision bylaw is almost as significant as a zoning bylaw or an OCP change. It's really significant for the people who actually have to administrate it on staff and do it and use it every day of their lives. So I'd respectfully ask, and I wasn't aware until, and I made some calls today about the Suit Builders Association. And I encouraged your staff, and I didn't know what they were called, but now I do know, to work with them and work with this council, work with those people who can make your council, your staff, and their community better.
Mr.
So
Hartshorn, the time is up, so if you can.
I'll wrap up quickly, Your Worship. So I'd respectfully ask that you table this tonight, refer it to the Suit Builders Association, and ask for a response by the end of May or something on a short-term leash, so that you can get their response before you go forward and have to rescind. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Herb Haldane, yes, I agree with pretty much everything was just said. We run into right now is the issues of these brand new road cross sections that you want to bring in. The ones that they're putting in that I read today, they're a lot more expensive than even a bunch of the ones you have in the plan already. If you make things too costly for any developers to do anything, so nobody's going to apply for development and you're not going to get anything done, and you're definitely not going to get the roads built that we desperately need to get connectivity here. There's road cross sections that still refer to some of the more rural lands outside of the sewer specified area. And we keep asking these people are doing 1 and 2 lot subdivisions to put in sidewalks and gutters and curbs and lights and all this other stuff. Well, this should be all talked about before we bring first, second reading to any kind of a bylaw that basically leaves all the public consultation part out until you get to a public hearing. So I'd like to run this through the gauntlet before we bring it for first and second reading, so we can maybe do some changes to some of the stuff that doesn't work for the development community, the builders, and even some of the small homeowners. I came in front of you once before to talk about all the onerous things expected on a 1 lot subdivision. Well, I looked in there and there's no changes to make anything easier on the 1 lot subdivisions. They still have to do street lights, sidewalks, all this, even in these old roads, old subdivisions, and all the expectations now are upwards of $120,000, $130,000 to do a 1 lot subdivision. And they actually pay more money in the end than these 20 and 30 lot subdivisions, because all the cost is passed down to 1 or 2 lots rather than over the whole project. So I too think the development community should at least have some say, or at least get to do some input. You can always come back to you a month or 2 months from now for first and second reading, if everybody agrees that changes that are good. So anyhow, just wanted to say that again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You've done this before. 1 minute, 52 seconds. Sorry, I have a response from Mr. Schaefer, our CA.
Not so much as a response, it's just a clarification, Your Worship.
Okay.
This particular bylaw that's on this evening's agenda is not the broad look at the entire bylaw 404. This is in particular one individual clauses, I think is clear from Mr. Carter's report. This is a very specific item. This is not the broad overreaching review of the entire subdivision control bylaw, which we've been working on for more than a year now.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Ellen Lurs. I agree with the two fellows that spoke before me. It's interesting. Because I feel the same way. And then the discussion tonight about the OCP review and then the zoning bylaws. I feel that the council and public and the developers and those who are working in the community, we all have to get together and decide what it is, how we're going to do our bylaws to accommodate the builders as well, because things are really costly for everybody. And we have to look at things differently. I think we have to talk to each other and communicate. And with the OCP review, before we go to an OCP review, I think we have to do some discussions on our bylaws and our standard bylaws and the OCP review. And then you go to zoning bylaw. Well, the OCP review, if you go to OCP and we adopt what's there, then you go directly to zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw reflects what's in the OCP. And if the OCP doesn't reflect what the people want, then you get a zoning bylaw that doesn't reflect what the people want. So I think we have to get things in order first before we go any further with the OCP review. At least we have to have a really good input from the public in all these aspects, because it's not working. It's just not working. As you know, people, the building is down. People aren't building because of they can't borrow that money. The money's it's too expensive with interest rates. And besides that, if we put more things onto the public, and as Herb said too, the one lot subdivision, we've seen that where somebody has to put in a sidewalk and curbs with one lot subdivision. That's onerous. That doesn't make any sense. I just want to quickly say, I was talking to my son who's in Indiana. 5 seconds. Okay, he's in Indiana, and he has in a town that has Jeffersonville that's 10 times the size of Souk. They have 5 employees. This fellow had to get a subdivision and subdivision approval, board of variance, and a building permit. It cost him $200, and it was done in 1 month. So just for your information.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Okay, going once, going twice. That's it, folks. All right. Move on to item number, move on to the consent agenda. Okay, so item 8.1 be adopted by general consent. That's correspondence. I would like to pull an item from correspondence, the letter from, let me just have a look here. From Paul Crowley with regards to the World Down Syndrome Day. Anything else? Councillor Pearson?
I don't see it listed in here. We received a letter, was it last week, about the inclusion of Gatewood in our BCC road bylaw.
Okay,
I thought it was, I know I got the letter. I know it went to council, but I don't see it in here.
I don't see it here, so maybe.
Excuse me, Chair, if the letter came in after 10 o'clock Wednesday morning, it will be in this week's circulation.
Okay. Yeah, just because okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring it out, but I thought it was.
Councillor Bateman?
I cannot find the correspondence here. What page is it? I see it on the agenda, but I can't find. I didn't get it in the paper version. Yeah, I just, I recall that in that correspondence, there was one item from a group requesting a special acknowledgement by the district. And I know I think epilepsy. Okay, all right. I was just wondering whether there was a policy in terms of these. Okay, we'll discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just say it, Mike, even though my name's Tony. All right. Okay, so at this point, I'd just like to bring up, and I'm gonna have to go find it, unfortunately. The letter from Mr. Crowley. So it's one of the problems of not having this in our actual correspondence, by the way. Okay, hold on. So there was a request, along with a fairly clear motion actually provided. Okay. And I think I'm just going to read this out because obviously no one else can see it. I'm writing on behalf of the Greater Victoria Down Syndrome Society to see if the District of Sauk will be able to help celebrate World Down Syndrome on March 21st. And this is very similar to other requests that we've had. Why March 21st? Well, the one trait that every person with Down syndrome shares is a third copy of the 21st chromosome. Goes on to describe how it's celebrated worldwide. And then moves forward with a number of clauses. Whereas the World Down Syndrome Day is an international observance resolved by the General Assembly of the United Nations to raise public awareness of Down syndrome and promote equitable treatment of individuals with Down syndrome in accordance with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And whereas at this time, we take an opportunity to highlight the unique abilities, strengths, and needs of our community members with Down syndrome. And whereas individuals with Down syndrome have tremendous potential to live full and fulfilling lives as contributing members of our society. And whereas Canadians, we celebrate our similarities as well as our differences, knowing we are richer as a result. And whereas the District of Sauk values our citizens with Down syndrome and their families and supports the well-being of all individuals with Down syndrome so that they may achieve their fullest potential as a community that's compassionate. Know ye, that we do proclaim March 21st, 2020 shall be known as the Greater Victoria Down Syndrome. Anyway, they're proposing to make the 21st. Perfect, thank you. So I'd like to know what the rest of council, yes, Mr. Councilor Barrows.
Being that it's March 27th, is there any point in even dealing with it at this point in time? I mean, we can declare it for next year, I guess, but being that it was requested for March 21st, it's now the 27th. I think that we just let it sit and see what comes up next year.
Anybody else? Councilor Pearson?
Well, I think it's a gesture. And I think that and is to recognize it. And I think it's even though we're late, I think we make the proclamation and then next year it'll roll back into our calendars automatically. And I think it's a good gesture because we seem to always pass these and sometimes they're a little bit late or a little bit early. So I would make a motion to that effect.
Thank you, and I'll ask you in a second once discussion is completed. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, I just gonna make a comment that we had a similar request with regards to recognition of the rights of Blacks, I believe, some time ago. And I think that that's going to be coming forward at some point in terms of some sort of policy around this sort of thing. I think that we can absolutely take Councilor Pearson's motion and vote on it. And at the same time, I think this will probably also hopefully be brought together. And that was going to be one of my recommendations, to make sure that this was actually included when we do our policy work. But please make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we declare March 21st, 2023 World Down Syndrome Day by the District of Sauk.
Do I have a seconder?
No seconder.
Second by Councilor Jeunesse. Any further comments? Councilor Bateman.
Yeah, a bit of an after the fact declaration, but I suppose that's that's fine. Every day should be international. Yeah. Now, interestingly, I did find the other item in this consent agenda. Yeah, okay, thank you. Let's deal with that.
Okay, so any further comments? Councilor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just, I was hoping that maybe the councillor would make an amendment to acknowledge that it has passed the date. Because my concern is that if it goes out to the public that we're declaring something a week after that it was, they might think we're daft, but I don't know, just saying regarding that it is now past the date, we do want to make it known that we support this, but we're just late getting the switch. I'm not quite sure what I want. I don't want it to go out saying all of a sudden we declared something a week after it, so what? But I love your sentiment is that we want to acknowledge about this day. So if you can put something in the wording of that motion and the seconder agrees that we're doing it after the fact, that's all.
Thank you. I can suggest a friendly amendment, and I suggest that people not speaking turn their mics off. Okay, If we just remove 2023, then we're simply declaring March 21st as World Down Syndrome Day. And then, as you suggested, it would roll on to next year and the years after. And it's no longer a simple gesture at that point, it's actually doing something. So just thought.
My motion.
Okay, any further, Councilor Jeunesse?
I'm fine with that amendment.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to reports. Report 9.1.
Thank you. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything to go along to today. This is just a follow-up to the couple recent budget meetings staff and council have attended over the last week here. New information came to light after the March 21st budget meeting. And based on conversations around the capital projects and the potential funding sources. With the new information on the eligible uses for the Growing Communities Fund, as well as confirmation that we were unsuccessful in the Charters Road grant, staff worked together to come up with different funding options to fund these much needed projects and corridors. I will not do them justice, so Mr. Carter's here and can kind of speak to the importance of completing the Church Road roundabout and the Charters corridor as the next phases of the overall transportation master plan implementation. These are just the funding options staff have recommended be used to fund these projects. And as stated in the report, these would be most likely carried over between 2 fiscal years for staff, just based on procurement timelines, fish windows, et cetera, for these projects. So they'll be bridging between 2023, because we're already into April pretty quickly here of 2023, plan for completion in 2024. And then once those 2 main projects are completed, the next focus, or in conjunction with this all along, I wouldn't say we're not doing anything with it, would be the main through connector piece, which has a lot of moving pieces to that. So that is stuff, information that the engineering team has been working on for quite a while now, and will be working on in conjunction with all of these other projects. I can turn over to Mr. Carter to quickly talk about the other couple projects. Just highlighting a couple of the other changes would be the annual patch and pave. It's just reallocating the funding source for the addition for the $100,000 that was originally being proposed with the Growing Communities Fund. It's just a funding that through the capital asset reserve fund instead. That's normally where those annual patch and pave repairs are funded through. Again, the Charters corridor is just maximizing the use of the Growing Communities Fund, and then leveraging the DCCs, the community, or the community building fund, formerly gas tax, casino fund, and there's grants and other funding available in that final column there for those 2 projects. As council is aware, the Demamio Creek project, there's a grant pending for that. So staff know that there will be district contribution required to that much needed project. So those are the proposed funding sources for that. And the one addition, the one addition to this would be the sport box. We were already planning, there's just under $300,000 of carryover funding that will be utilized to complete the first phase of the landscaping at that project. We know that there is multiple other landscaping phases, as well as the desire to put a 3-on-3 basketball court there, some stands, etc. So staff are just proposing using the remaining funds to that project as an eligible use for the funds, and just to completely finish off that great community asset. And while we're already going to be mobilized in that area anyways, doing landscaping, economies of scale, we can do the other trail improvements, as well as I stated, finish the basketball court construction and stands, etc., for the community to access. I've just included just a summary of what the estimated closing balances in those few reserve funds will be. If this is supported by council, this will be included in the 5-year financial plan that will be presented to council on April 11th. I will stop there and answer any questions, or Mr. Carter can elaborate a little bit more on the 2 major roads projects included there if council would like.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Ms. Gray has pretty much covered everything. We were unsuccessful with the charters grant, so she's just looked at a way to reconfigure the proposed budget to council for 2023 to include the charters corridor as well as the Church Road roundabout. Both those pieces I look at as arteries of the main transportation master plan that needs to go in. The arteries need to be in place before the heart goes in. The heart of the plan being the Throop connector and the Phillips corridor improvements. These pieces need to be in place before that corridor goes in because they will not take the traffic that it will see if it goes in reverse order. Had nothing else to add to that unless council has any questions. Happy to answer.
Any questions from council? Council Bateman?
Yeah, Mr. Carter, there were, through you to Mr. Carter, there were two grants for charters, right? So we're talking now about the big federal grant. And what is the status on the active transportation piece, which I think is going to build out your intersection, the four-legged intersection at Souk Road?
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman, we were unsuccessful with both pieces of that. So with the charters corridor, as well as the piece that was going to fund the intersection improvements or go towards that project that was in relation to the south end of charters from Gollage down to the highway, including aspects of the intersection and active transportation on the highway.
Did you get any direction from the granting bodies as to what went? Not our turn this time, I suppose.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bateman, we have what we got notice back on the intersection one, and the ministry didn't have time to provide us with a support letter. It's a project that's required from them as well. So they said that it would be approved with the ministry's support and to resubmit the application this year, and it would be approved for the years going forward.
Could I also follow up with Ms. Gray? And did you mention Dimma Mill Creek Bridge? Because it was to get a significant piece of that funding, right? Just over $1 million. And you found a way to keep that on track for this year, or?
Yes, correct. So this would be bridging between 2023 and 2024 as well for the Dimma, just again, based on fish windows and construction timelines. Once we get confirmation we've actually received this grant, then we'll have to post a tender and all of that. So realistically, this project will most likely be transitioning to 2024, but planning and fingers crossed that this will be a successful application. It is as well a Parks DCC project. So it's looking at leveraging those Parks funds, the DCC funds for that project, and using the other gas tax and casino funds that have more looser guidelines on what the funding can be used for, whereas the Growing Communities Fund is very generous, and I appreciate it. It does kind of limit what we're allowed to use it on. It has to be kind of net new, and so that's why those projects have been chosen based on no current funding established for those projects, cost overruns, and net new as far as the sport box piece goes.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. I'm looking for a motion to accept the report for information. I believe that's what's required at this point, that council receive for information. Moved by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor Jeunesse. Any further comments? Seeing none, call the question. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back now again. Okay, so on to the bylaws. Okay, so bylaw 10.1, bylaw 875-404-3 subdivision and development standards amendment bylaw 2023.
Perfect. Thank you, Worship. Through your worship to council. So staff have identified a required bylaw amendment. Mostly just to impose requirements of the town center cross section within the town center's transportation master plan. So right now, as bylaw 404 stands, the municipal engineer is allowed to accept design reconfigurations of existing cross sections in the bylaw. Transportation master plan is essentially reconfiguration of these cross sections. So putting out referrals in alignment with the transportation master plan is acceptable as long as it's a reconfiguration of design standards. What is not a reconfiguration of design standards, which was brought to our attention, was putting on an extra requirement to impose 4-meter sidewalks because it's additional infrastructure, not a design reconfiguration for the town center cross section, which applies to the 4-meter sidewalks in the town center. So the bylaw amendment we're bringing forward is to ensure that staff referral comments are in alignment with the vision of the transportation master plan, mostly to do with the town center cross section and 4-meter sidewalk requirements. The further aspect of the amendment is basically to have consistency with the brick sidewalks that are being placed in the town center. And the amendment would require that the brick sidewalks are put in as opposed to concrete sidewalks for Highway 14, south of Highway 14, going east of Murray Road and west of Selmco Road. So that covers basically your entire town center in the south end of Highway 14. These requirements are put in place so that we can ensure the consistency in putting forward council's vision for the cross sections in the transportation master plan. Council has the ability to approve any variance if anyone wants to come forward with a proposal that is not in alignment with those standards.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, I'll go first. The only place that it's mentioned in our transportation master plan is on page 87 of 89. When it talks about the 4-meter sidewalks, and it says in brackets on that page, it says, I'm gonna look at the master plan there. Sorry. It says commercial. And there's only one little bracket that says commercial area. So when we have 4-meter sidewalks on both sides of the road, I like the idea of some in front of commercial space, but I'm not sure we would gain any benefit in a residential type area or residential environment. I think this, I looked at the transportation master plan you guys have adopted, it's been adopted, but this is kind of overkill in my opinion, 4 meters, but again, it's been adopted and it says commercial area in brackets. So I'm not understanding what the intent of writing it in brackets was. Town center, and it says commercial area, which leads to ambiguity when you're trying to make a decision, when you're sitting here and people are going to come forward for a variance. We had a member of the public bring forward an interesting point. When we're embarking on a process of the OCP being adopted, our building and subdivision bylaw, transportation master plan's already been adopted, but this goes into the whole development permit areas and that. So I'm of the opinion it should be tabled and considered at the time that we're going to go through a lot of design in our downtown. I have no problem with a nice 4-meter sidewalk in front of somewhere that's commercial. And our commercial town center, to me, currently exists from Church Road to Otter Point Road. And it extends a little bit beyond that, sort of arguably one way or the other. And there's no 4-meter sidewalks anywhere.
Is there a question for staff or is it?
So,
a comment?
Staff,
Sorry, just.
no, I have no question as a comment. I'm going to make a motion somewhere in a minute.
Yep, just. Was there, did I see your hand up? No?
No,
Okay.
Well, I guess, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have I just want some clarification from staff. Now, what you're choosing to amend here is just a small portion of the subdivision standards. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is just an amendment to have the cross sections align with the TMP. The subdivision bylaw has been in draft format. We've been working on a revision to the entire bylaw over the last year. That process, as communicated to one of the developers we met with this morning, is going to go through a wholesome public consultation process, which will involve the development community, UDI. The first steps is for staff to get that to a final draft for basically the entire bylaw. We will bring it to council, so council's aware of it, and then we will go to council to approve the public consultation process. This is a minor amendment, and this is just to ensure that the vision of the TMP can be basically imposed under the bylaw. For the town center cross section in particular is where the additional 4-meter sidewalk requirement is. The ability for council to approve any variance, if so desired, is there if they desired not to have 4-meter sidewalks in any of those areas. But without this amendment, staff cannot put a 4-meter sidewalk requirement onto anyone developing within the town center.
And I'd just like to ask a quick clarification point. This would include the commercial properties that Councillor Pearson is describing?
That's correct. If they wanted to vary from the 4-meter configuration, they would have to go for a variance, which council would have the ability to support or not support.
Thank you. Councillor Beddoes, you had some further?
Yeah, no, I was just, I wanted to make it clear that this is just the town center, which is from Otter Point over to Church Road. And it's been well covered with the OCP, the whole committee and staff did a walk around that area. And one of the concerns, I guess maybe this is not, I don't think you were there at that time, but we're concerned about the seascapes from the road. And to have narrow streets where nobody can see the ocean was one of the reasons why we were looking for wider boulevards in that area. So maybe Mr. Pallo will, he was on that walkabout. I think that, if you confirm that, I'm just going from memory.
Yes, that walkabout, we discussed maintaining open streetscapes. So typically I've been referring to them in previous discussions as kind of your north-south streets going down towards the water. So that streetscape will remain open so that if you're at Highway 14 and look south towards the water, it would be wide enough that viewscapes would remain open. And so that's what the larger cross section that we would see in that town center area.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so let's say, so these complete street diagrams refer to all roads in Souk, of course, right? So we have the full range of them. The sticking point seems to be the town center here. Now the map or the diagram we see on page 79 here. So does that, to Councillor Pearson's point, does that differ just with the use of that? The word commercial has been removed from this schematic. I don't have my transportation master plan with me.
I don't have it in front of me either, but in terms of if council desires basically to reduce the requirement of 4 meters, that's what the variance process is there for. Right now, in the vision of the TMP, it identifies the town center, it identifies the 4-meter cross sections to be imposed in the town center south of Highway 14. So if council desired basically to provide a variance to a developer only requiring 4 meters in certain sections or 2 meters, whatever they were proposing, council has that ability to do so.
Okay, so in the current bylaw, only Brownsy Boulevard is indicated for the 4-meter sidewalk.
It's indicated as a 3-meter sidewalk.
3 meter.
There's nothing that requires a 4-meter sidewalk in the existing bylaw, which is why I cannot accept a design reconfiguration.
Right.
The bylaw gives me the authority to accept design reconfigurations, but because there is not a 4-meter cross section, I can't accept like a design configuration or require one with a 4-meter standard. So bylaws amendments going forward for consideration so that we can impose that vision of the town center, but variances can be considered anytime by council.
So could you remind me of the transportation master plan public process, that there was a full engagement, was there not? Moving this forward?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bateman, it was conducted before I got here, but the transportation master plan and the adoption of that did have a full consultation process involving a public consultation process. Ms. Gray might be able to allude to the exact details on it, but it was put through public consultation prior to adoption.
And full process here in council chambers. Yeah. Okay, I had something, but it's slipping away. So yes, so and to be clear, this is an amendment of an existing 2014 document, and you intend to have this a complete new version of the bylaw by year end approximately?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bateman. So we have the initial draft of the bylaw done. We've been working on that. Upon procurement of to retain a consultant for the development approvals process. One of the first tasks for that successful consultant is going to be to put a further review onto this bylaw. When that further review and they're going to suggest if there's any sort of ways to make it easier to read, any reconfiguration of it, then they will present us with the final draft. That'll be put forward to council, and that's when we're going to be recommending a full-blown public consultation process. So we anticipate that through the summer, we'll be able to bring that report forward to council with the new draft bylaw for council to see and to approve a public consultation process to go through the bylaw prior to council considering it for adoption.
I have a further question. Oh, Mr. Schaefer?
And just, it occurs to me, just having another look at the agenda package, that the entirety of the bylaw 404 is included in the agenda package, but they're very, because the council has asked to see red line copies of anything we amend. So the whole bylaw is there, but the amendments are very narrow and specific. So that I think might have resulted in a couple of members of the public misconstruing the intent of the amendment this evening.
I have a further question for Mr. Carter, I believe. There's been a request from the development community, the building community, to be included on some of the bylaw amendments and changes that affect them directly. Will that, when we talk of the public, is there going to be a special effort made to reach out to that community? I hope.
Yeah, your worship, 100%. It would be involving the development community, consultants within the community. Every developer and builder will have an opportunity to weigh in on it. And basically that will be brought forward as part of the bylaw for consideration or for discussion prior to council looking at adopting the bylaw.
Okay, so I'd like to make a comment of my own at this point in time. My understanding of the bylaw amendment that's been brought forward is that unless we actually have it in place, we don't actually have the ability to put in place the transportation master plan. The transportation master plan is a great deal about making sure we have cycling lanes, pedestrian lanes, a vibrant downtown core with, room for people to sit, to walk, to talk, to engage in commerce, to do whatever you do in a city when you actually have decent sized spaces. I think that Councillor Pearson's point of why would this apply to pedestrian area, to residential areas is well taken. And I hope that ideally staff can come forward with something at some point that will help address that. But this does look like an oversight in terms of actually putting into place our transportation master plan. And that if we don't actually have this in place, we have no actual means of having the downtown that we want, and the community's already said they want. Councillor Jeunesse.
Yeah, to me, the 4-meter sidewalks on either side of the road in a residential area doesn't make a lot of sense. I can see it in a commercial area where you have sidewalk cafes and all that sort of thing going on, but can we amend the transportation master plan to have the 4-meter sidewalks included in commercial areas only?
Through your worship to Councillor Lajeunesse, I would suggest entertaining variances on a case-by-case basis. At the end of the day, mixed use is desired in the areas you want to densify in the town center. We're hopefully having commercial on most of the frontages down there. If you were on one corridor that had 2 adjacent properties next to each other, one had proposed commercial on the bottom, and then the next property did not, you wouldn't want to transition a 2-meter sidewalk to a 4-meter sidewalk, back to a 2-meter sidewalk to a 4-meter sidewalk. You want one consistent standard for the town center, which is a 4-meter sidewalk cross section. If it made sense on a case-by-case basis to consider a variance, that's when I would suggest considering the variance.
And just to clarify, I believe that part of what Mr. Carter is saying there is that in the future, we may very well want commercial in areas that are presently residential. And if we don't have the sidewalks to support it, it's going to be a lot harder. Whereas if we do have the infrastructure to support commercial in areas that are immediately adjacent to areas that are presently commercial, they can become commercial. With a variance. Lots of variances. Anyway, I think Councilor Pearson.
Okay, so now I have a couple of questions. So obviously this has come to light because we've asked for 4 meters in a development. Is that correct? We've asked for a 4-meter sidewalk somewhere.
You've asked for a 4-meter sidewalk. You're saying
not me.
council, as in, are you saying a developer?
Yeah, we have a development project somewhere in the works. We know who it is probably now.
Yes.
We've told him that one of his design concepts has to be 4 meters.
Our referral comments reflected a 4-meter cross section in alignment with the TMP. Proposal was given for basically a 4-meter sidewalk in alignment with our referral, as well as a 2-meter sidewalk.
Mhm.
However, even the 2-meter sidewalk proposed by the developer is not 100% in line with the cross sections that are in the existing bylaw 404, because they show a 2-meter landscape frontage on a development, which if I did not support it as one of the amended sort of variances I could support, which I wouldn't, they would require a variance from council even for the 2-meter configuration they're putting forward.
I would suggest, Councilor Pearson, that although this line of question may seem fruitful, it's actually taking us away from the actual bylaw that's in front of us. And we don't actually have a report on this in front of us. So it's going to be a little bit.
Yeah,
more
and
challenging.
I'll keep my question. So
now we're gonna get your mic on.
So now we're gonna go back and. I must say the word impose. We're gonna go back and try and correct what appears to be the notion in a bylaw, but we've got a development in process. So
I'm gonna provide a clarification at this point in time. My understanding is that up until this point, based on the transportation master plan and the process that was in place, our engineer believed that he had the discretion in terms of actually requesting the 4-meter sidewalks in the existing bylaws. But that does not seem to be the case. So this was discovered in the process of this development. This is not targeting. It's actually trying to rectify a problem with the transportation master plan, which it seems at this point in time cannot actually be realized in the town center in the way that our bylaws stand. So I think it's that we discovered a problem with the alignment between our TMP and our bylaws and the vision of the community.
Okay, so. It's difficult to have more comments. We have only one section in the entire transportation master plan, and it says our town center, and then it says in brackets, commercial area. We have an approved project on Brownsea Boulevard, which is in our town center, with not 4-meter sidewalks. We have. So it's confusing, so I would not be supporting amending the bylaw and then thinking that we're going to come back, because again, it lends itself to one of our bigger problems, which is delay in process. So if we've got a 2-meter sidewalk and that's all we're allowed to have, and somebody puts a proposal in, then we ought to entertain that proposal. The second part of that is that I don't like to plan for variances going forward. If we don't have our bylaws in order, that's not the fault of the developer.
Any further comments? Councilor Jeunesse.
Yeah, just further to that, and I guess this is a question for staff. What was the development community included in the development of the transportation master plan?
The public consultation process happened before I got here. I do not know if what particular aspects of the development community were included, but the transportation master plan was adopted by council. I'm sure council would have supported the appropriate public consultation, and it would have been put forward by staff or previous staff in my position or the CAO.
And your worship, Ms. Gray is just checking on that, on the consultation process.
Okay, well, Mrs. Gray is checking.
And at this point, your worship, it says that there was community and stakeholder engagement in the process. That's the reference on page 4 of the transportation master plan, which is available on our website. If this took place over the last 3 or 4 years, I would assume that the CAO at the time would have insisted that that take place, as the stakeholders would, but again, I wasn't here, so.
Council Beddoes?
Yeah, just, I was around at the transportation master plan and the engagements they had. There certainly was every opportunity for everybody in the community to comment. It was kind of a long process down at Edwardville Community School where you put your ideas on little sticky notes, and then we broke into groups and discuss it. And I think it was open to everybody. So hopefully nobody felt left out of that process, but I certainly felt that it was, and I put a comment on mine about the Through Road extension, which was gladly it was brought forward. So I think so.
Sorry, your worship, just one more piece is the transportation master plan was also supported by Urban Systems. Wholesome public consultations are part of the development of any master plan, which they would have engaged with council and with the community. They're the same consultant that we worked with to undertake the amendment to the DCC program, which also had a thorough public consultation process. So public consultation would have been standard for that as well as it was for the DCC program.
And just to clarify, when you say public consultation, we are including stakeholders specifically.
Stakeholders would be included as members of the public, yes.
That's a very important distinction because the public and stakeholders could be different things. I'd like to comment briefly, and then I think we should see if someone wants to move. From what I can tell, unless we actually have something in place, we can't actually move forward. For example, I believe that the various works that have happened on Church and Otter Point and so on and so forth that are based on the transportation master plan are intended to have bike lanes, to have large sidewalks, to basically encourage a vibrant downtown, which is basically the vision of the OCP and the vision of the transportation master plan. Our staff has been working on amendments and revisions to these bylaws for the last year. And I'm assuming that when this comes to fruition, we're going to have more stakeholder engagement, which means that what we're doing right now, for all intents and purposes, is a Band-Aid to make sure that the transportation master plan is not completely ignored over the next period of time while we're doing that further stakeholder engagement, while we're actually potentially revising all of this with stakeholder engagement towards a new bylaw. And I'm just going to get a confirmation. I see Mr. Carter's head nodding. Okay. As such, I would support as it stands. I'd be curious to ask a question of staff. Is there a need to move forward all the way to third reading at this point in time?
Your worship, I think that's our standard procedure for bylaws that don't require a public hearing is for second and third.
Okay. Councilor Beddoes? Okay, so Councilor, would you like to read it?
Council give first, second, third reading bylaw cited subdivision standards bylaw number 875 brackets 404-03 bracket comma 2020.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Bateman. Any further comments or questions? Comments at this point, sorry, not questions. We're all done with that. Oh, please motivate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see this as trying to get our bylaw in order because of something coming to our attention that we thought we had, we don't. And it's a small portion of the bylaw that we're amending. It's not amending the whole downtown suit. It's not amending the transportation master plan. And from my work in the last number of years, in regards to what the public wanted in the downtown, I think this complies completely with it. So, and the nice thing about it is that if somebody feels they've been aggrieved in some manner, they always can come back to us for a variance. If it doesn't make sense to have
a wider sidewalk, and my understanding is that the walking portion is still only going to be 4 feet, but it's the boulevard that we're concerned with that gets the 4 meters. So there's always an out, they can come to a variance, and I like that process. I mean, not everything is going to fit 100%. If somebody comes to us with a problem saying, well, this doesn't make any sense at all, I'm doing this purely residential, there's no other wide sidewalks on the street, of course, we're going to consider the variance. So I think there's an out for it, and I think we're not trying to change the whole standard here. We're just doing one small portion that deals with that sidewalk issue in the downtown core. That's my motivation.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'll second all that Councilor Beddoes has just said. Just a reminder, you know, that transportation and Parks and Trails master plan process through Urban Systems did go through. I've got my blog post here, January 30th, 2019, EMCS Sea Park open houses. The process went on through that year, and they were released in July 2020 with further open houses at that time. I don't know if specific stakeholder engagement was conducted. However, it has been in other plans we've done, so it'd be interesting to know. But that given the rapid pace of growth in our town right now, I think it's important to get those community affirmed complete streets cross sections into the bylaw at this point, knowing that we will be receiving a full bylaw at some point in the nearish multi-month future, and at that point we can reconsider.
Councillor Pearson?
Well, I won't be supporting that motion based on the ask of 4 meters. I think it's huge. And everywhere else, we're allowing it to be 3. We've got one small section. We're planning on a variance. We're talking about passing a bylaw, and we're planning a variance to amend the 4 meters. The time to amend the 4 meters or more robust discussion. And I recognize that we're not all here tonight. I can't support something where we're going forward planning on amending, and it seems to be open discussion. Like, yeah, well, it sounds almost a little bit ridiculous, but yeah, we're going to ask for 4 meters. But I can't support that. We have to stick to what makes common sense, but we also have an obligation to move things along. And the word variance is a delay. It's another delay in the process. We're faced with delays. We haven't had any real applications since last July. We've had certainly none since I've been here, since November. And now we're planning on building in another delay. And this is another one of those things that's an irritant to me personally. So I won't be supporting the motion. Anyway,
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lejeunesse?
Yeah, I'm not going to be supporting it either for the very same reasons that Councillor Pearson has pointed out. If we're creating a process that every development that comes forward is asking for a variance, that doesn't make sense. And we haven't had anything come forward yet in this term. So I don't like the delay tactics.
Thank you, Councillor Lejeunesse. I'll make some final comments myself. I think that the development community generally wants clarity more than anything. I think that right now, when we have vague discretionary powers with our engineer that are not actually supported by bylaw, that creates a lack of clarity, which means that we've got talk of variances. I think what's happened here is that we have a disconnect between our bylaws and the TMP, which has created ambiguity and a lack of clarity, and has created a loophole. And so I believe this is less about actually changing the rules than actually making them unified so we don't have loopholes. And at some point, I believe very soon, we're going to have the input of those stakeholders. And we're going to be looking at change, and it's going to be coming up fairly quick. So I will be supporting the bylaw as it stands. So all in favor? All opposed? Counselor Lejeunesse and Pearson are opposed, Counselor, and the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Mike. Future Policing Costs Reserve, bylaw number 878.
It's just for adoption. For the next two bylaws are just for adoption.
Perfect. All right. All in favor? So moved. Sorry, seconded by Councilor Jeunesse. Any further comment? No, of course not. All in favor? Motion carries. 10.2 Future Fire Service Reserve, moved by Councilor Bateman. Seconded by Councilor Beddoes. All in favor? Motion carries. Growing Community Reserve Fund, bylaw number 880.
I can just briefly speak to this one.
Please
The
do.
brand new one. Through the chair. So this is similar to the COVID reserve fund we received from the province a couple years ago now. There's specific rules and guidelines that we have to follow, reporting required for this. When the further information was provided right after the budget meeting that occurred last week, with the frequently asked questions, further specifics and direction and guidance were provided to staff, and the requirement to create a specific reserve fund to hold these funds separately from other funds was one of the requirements of this funding. So similar to the COVID restart fund, this is just a specific reserve fund staff are requesting council support setting up. So any funds, any interest earned on this fund will be deposited to the reserve fund, and the uses in the bylaw are in alignment with the eligible uses the province provided. And one caveat in there was in the further information that was provided is the province's expectation is that these funds will be spent within approximately 5 years, and we will have to report out on these funds every year until they're spent. And while looking at the eligible use of funds, in a perfect world, it'd be great to pick a bunch of these different items to allocate funds towards, but staff really feel like the top priorities right now are roads and recreation. Community safety decisions have already been made. So based on unsuccessful grant opportunities, other items kind of coming into alignment, that's why staff have made the capital recommendations for use of these funds.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Gray? I have one very quick question. So this is basically to put the Growing Communities Fund into a reserve. Are there any other monies that can go in there?
I wouldn't recommend putting other funds in this. This is specifically for the Growing Communities Fund, so I don't believe this would be if there was other funds council would like to save something for, staff would be recommending setting up a standalone reserve fund because this does have specific
Very specific
restrictions and limitations on it.
Thank you very much. I'm looking for a mover. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Jeunesse. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Good. Motion carries. New business. Any new business? No new business. All right. Moving on to correspondence requiring action. Item number 12, BC Farmers Market in your community. 12.1. Was this brought forward by anyone specifically? Please do.
Yeah, this is a request from the BC Farmers Market nutrition coupon program organizers. This is in the agenda, isn't it? And what they're seeking is a simple letter from the district supporting this program, which is designed to give low-income households, seniors, and pregnant women with weekly coupons to spend at farmers markets across the province. So these coupons are available at the Souk Night Market and at the Souk Country Market. And I think it's a simple matter of the mayor drafting a letter in support to Health Minister Dix.
All right.
So I'd like to move that we do that.
Okay, so would you like to state the motion?
Yeah, that's
Council direct staff to draft a letter to our Health Minister Adrian Dix to support the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, perhaps? Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further comments or questions? I will comment that as a farmer at the market a few years ago, it's really nice to actually have people showing up and being really excited about getting some bacon for some coupons. It was really good. So I liked it. Okay, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Item number 12.2, Crest Emergency Communication Update. That was requested by Mayor Tate, who's not here. I'm wondering if we should just table this until Mayor Tate is available. Is that okay with council? Perfect. Do we need a motion to that effect, or is that just
Yes, most, oh my goodness.
it's only 8:20? Come on.
Motion to postpone the item to the next meeting when Mayor Tate is in attendance.
Someone move that? Councilor Jeunesse, seconded by Councilor Pearson. All in favor? Motion is postponed. Council verbal reports. Don't all rush.
Okay.
Councilor Bateman.
I'll start off. Let's see now. It's some right, yeah. So on Saturday, I attended the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting, which we have every 2 months. It was a 5-hour meeting, and there was new procedure bylaw, new strategic plan, draft facilities master plan. That was an interesting process because they've now come up with a new rating system for all 39 branches within the system. And there's criteria, and this will determine where money goes for upgrades and new builds. So I'm happy to report that after more than a decade at the top of the list, Suk is now at the bottom. So that's good news for us. I attended the Transition Suk Forum at the Community Hall on Sunday. Began with a remarkable blessing from Shirley Alphonse, where she blessed the room with this water that has been collected. I'm sure some of you know about this from, dozens and dozens. Andrew Moore read out this list of sources from this water, which included both Jordan Rivers, the Ganges, and he told us a story about how he and Chief Planis had sidled up to an iceberg floating off Greenland and shaved. Anyway, that was the start of it. And from that very warm and yeah, it was. And it took them a fair bit of time. So there were breakout groups that following the keynote speech by Highlands Councillor Gord Baird on water security, tiny homes, car shares, council advocacy, zero waste Suk, where there will be another street cleanup happening mid-month in April. They're going to do a tool swap in addition to their Al, I'm looking at you. Tool swap, you and Dana could really enjoy that moment. And there was a very substantial conversation about a Suk Community Development Commission that could be brought forward to Councillor Jeunesse and Ms. Scott. And a group is forming to create a Suk Parks Society, which would be a localized version of what the Wanda Fuca Community Trails Society is doing. So Sid Jorna is involved in that, and they would work ideally with the district, as the JDF Society does, to work on local invasive species, maintaining of existing spaces, and advocacy for more. Yeah, so that's.
Thank you. Nothing to report. I have a question for Councillor Bateman. Do you know when the tool swap is?
No, it hasn't been scheduled yet. There is a repair cafe coming in June, I think.
I hope you'll advise her and make sure it gets out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
They seem to be highly motivated and on the case.
And I have
Yeah.
a further request for EV chargers at future libraries for bicycles. Thank you. All right. Okay, I'm looking for a motion. Oh, Councillor Jeunesse.
I have a couple of things, I guess. The all staff training session that was held at Prestige was a good event and enlightening. And what else? The provincial announcement about our new integrated health center. I was at that announcement and look forward to seeing that breaking ground. It's scheduled to open in 2025, so I would hope to see something happening pretty soon there. The coffee with council last Monday, was it? Yeah. And that's about it.
Okay, so Councilor just snuck in and stole my thunder, but that's okay.
Same thing.
I can take it. I can take it. Having said that, I will add that when the health center was announcement was made by Adrian Dix, it was all former Premier John Horgan and former LMA and present MLA John Horgan was there. And a lot of people stepped up to basically appreciate him. I think that was his final appearance as an MLA as he's retiring. So he came to Souk to do it. Kind of nice. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Anybody? Councilor Barrows. Seconded by Councilor Jeunesse. All in favor? Thank you very much for the good work.